Hey everyone, and welcome to my Procreate demo for the piece I call Goliath. So here's some art I did 10 years ago of Goliath from Gargoyles, one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and I thought it'd be fun to revisit it. So here's the revisit. I actually was screwing around on my phone, as you do when you're bored, and I found this old photo that I had right here of line art from 1 year ago. So see the synergy here? Line art from 1 year ago, redo of a piece of art from 10 years ago. And I thought it'd be fun to finally get some colors on this since I never did that previously. So here is the beginning of the process. So I'm using lines from before, so there's no drawing here, just straight painting. And a lot of people have asked me why I don't use the autofill tool. Well, you can see here, this is what the line looks like when I'm starting to block it in, and then this is what it looks like when you use the autofill tool. It's really hard to see, or maybe it's not hard to see, but right there you can see the anti-aliasing issue. That's the main reason why I don't use it, because I'm a little too anal about the way the paint looks, meaning whether or not there are little errors here or there, and so I don't like doing that for that reason, because things like that happen since it's a raster program. So now here is the remainder of the painting process. I'm continuing to block things in. The way this has been blocked in is each one of those wing stems are on their own layer. His body is on his own layer. His hair is on its own layer. The head and ear are on its own layer, and then the eyes are on their own layer. And then as I work through the piece, I'm actually taking each one of those layers and adding new layers, painting those layers on top, and then putting all that into a folder and naming it. That's my current process in Procreate. So all the different layers are still called like layer 1, layer 2, but then they're in a folder that's called like head or body, and that's how this goes. So you can see here, I've also gotten questions about how I sort of make the transition from a lined drawing to a painted picture that doesn't have the lines on it anymore. And really it's like a jumping off sort of mentality. It's like you're painting and you're toggling the lines on and off, and you're maybe even lowering the opacity as you go, and then there's sort of a point where you just say, all right, I'm done, and you turn the lines off and you can sort of proceed from there. You'll see that happen in this piece at some point. I don't remember when it happens, but it's really just about, have I put enough structure in, enough paint structure based on the lines where I feel like the paint is representing the way the line art looked? Does it have the same vibe? Does it just feel like how I want it to look when it transfers from line to paint? And that's really when that jumping off point happens. Most of the structure in this original line art was just in the face because it was originally a headshot, and then I'm expanding it from there. So you can see I do that. I jump back and forth with the lines a lot when I'm working on the face here, but then when I actually get to the body and the wings, the lines are just off at that point. And I'm having to live completely in the paint. So that's really how you go from that lined look to the painted look, is you're really just looking for that point where you say, okay, the paint is representing the line enough that I'm only now referencing the painted qualities of this, and I'm no longer referencing the line art. Usually for me, if I were going to sort of come up with a general rule, it's like, you've got your base layer, which is the original flat. Then you've got, like, let's say one layer up, which is this purple that I'm applying right now. And then you go up like one more level, and it's one more level brighter, which is this right here that I'm putting down. That to me would be usually around the time where I start feeling comfortable to ditch the line layer. It's going to happen during this phase. So what I used in this piece, a lot of people ask about the brushes, the various brushes that I use. This entire thing, the entire skin was painted using the round brush in the painting section of Procreate. All the color that's laid down on the skin is used with that, aside from maybe some of the darks that I try to feather in, which is just using that sort of big, soft airbrush in the airbrush section. And then my eraser throughout most of the skin, actually I'm pretty sure my eraser throughout the entire piece is that big, soft airbrush brush. So you can see here I'm going for a bit of a lighting scheme that's like, it's a little top right, but it's mostly straight on. so it's like straight on his skin with a slightly top right bend to it. Then I'm going to put like a glow from sort of the city below is going to come up from the bottom. That's going to be relatively subtle. And then I'm going to have like a glow for a rim light coming from the moonlight up above. So I knew that going in. That's just what I figured I would do for this, sort of slightly dictated by the line art. And then so that's what I'm aiming for. That's always sort of like one of the things that I think people forget the most about with art is the planning. It's best to try and have a game plan. It's sort of like life. You have a game plan, but you're prepared for, alternatives. So that's really what I knew that lighting scheme going into this from the get-go. Now you can see on the ear there where I put the paint down really heavy and then I erase away. For those of you who haven't seen past videos, what I'm usually doing is I put the paint down in big chunks on new layers. On a new layer, I just put it in sort of heavy, and then I use that big soft airbrush to erase away, and then merge those layers in. So ultimately when this piece is done, you have like a layer for each level of the values of skin or values of whatever it is that I'm painting. But in the middle of the process, you might get a lot of layers in there that then get collapsed together as I go. And really that's because, you want to be able to edit, but it's because when I want to soften something with a big, broad softening, like using that big airbrush eraser, and I want to just I want it to be as big as possible so it can be as smooth as possible, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that I don't disrupt stuff that I've already painted. And since it's a little harder to do things, like you can't do masks, but you can do selections and stuff. Since it's a little harder in Procreate to do that, I prefer to do it by having new layers that I'm erasing away so that I don't disrupt those older sections. So now I'm sort of putting down the highest value that I use for Goliath's skin here. Again, Goliath, awesome character, one of the greatest characters I think in American animation, and that show I think is one of the best. And Goliath is a little bit of a paler pink, or excuse me, not pink, paler purple gray in the show. I just wanted to make it way more saturated because I like saturated colors. I thought it'd be really fun to really amp up the purpleness here. So now I'm going in and putting in the darkness in his eyes, and then I'm going to start carrying that down with the cash out of the nose. You can still see me still flipping the lines on and off there, but I just flipped them off. I think now all I flipped them on for was to see the exact nostril. So now I'm putting in the darkness around the ear? No, horns. Now we're in the lip. So I'm actually recording this in a really dark room, and I have the screen really low, so that's why sometimes I lose like where I'm at when I get to these darker values. So there we go, there we go, now I'm putting in some extra darkness in the ear. So now this is the section where I do like extra dark around the eyes, blush around the ears and nose, and then a 5 o'clock shadow on him. I thought it'd be fun if he had like sort of a lighter blue 5 o'clock shadow. And then here I just zoom in to show there's some subsurface scattering from the glow of his eyes. I did a little bit on his eyebrows and a little bit on the bridge of his nose, just because I thought that would be sort of a neat touch in there. Obviously, if his eyes were glowing, he would also have like subsurface scattering on his eyelids, but whatever, we're going to ignore that for now and just move on. So now for the hair, I jumped into some of the more not advanced, but like the weirder brushes down the side, which is the sable brush. I thought that could be really fun for his hair, to give it like a little bit of a coarse look. So that's what I used here. Initially, I went with like sort of a blue-green look to his hair, but I mean, he technically has like brown hair, like in most of the representation, so you'll see me color shift that in a second. But what I'm using here is I'm using the sable brush to do the texture, and then I'm using the soft eraser to erase away to try and give some dimension to it. So you can see that there's, that way it gets like, it looks like chunks of hair, sections of hair layered onto each other. That's just done by, painting some and then erasing the sides and then painting it back in where you want the highlight to be, just like you would on any kind of form. It's just you're doing it using sort of like strands or groupings of hair, I guess. And then I add in a bunch of little flyaways because that always helps break up these big chunky shapes that the hair is in. So I used the head to be a proof of concept for the purple for the whole piece. That's why that got done first, and I didn't move on to the rest of it. So once I got that where I wanted it, I just went back through using my palette that I save in the palette section and just start building out the rest of his body and his wings. You'll see that I never flatted the sort of like connective tissue that's on like gargoyle wings or bat wings. That was just because of laziness. You'll see that get thrown in a minute. So now I'm just rendering up his body, his neck, his shoulder, and his distant shoulder, and all of that is all in the same section, I guess you could say. But like I said before, the head is on its own thing, so that allows me to paint around the neck and where the head connects to the body without having to worry about maintaining that jawline. It's just a little bit easier this way. So you saw some of my layers got turned off on the face while I was doing it on the body. That was just to make sure that each one of those layers feel like they're being applied in the same amount for consistency's sake. And I put all these little divots and chunks in his skin because I like the idea that, you know, his sculpted form when he's stone, that he's exactly that when he's skin. So if he's got these like little divots and stuff, that still represents, it's still represented in his natural way. So now here doing the wings, in the cartoon form they don't have to really do anything to represent muscle. Obviously we're going for a slightly more fleshed out look here, so I just sort of, you know, fake in something that looks like it could be muscle or like there's some sort of structure in there. It's not anything real and I didn't really think about it that much. I just knew that I wanted to have a little bit of overlapping look to the muscle there. So same thing on the wing here, just following the same pattern, the same palette as the rest of it. And then making sure that I'm casting the right shadow. Yeah, you could criticize the fact that I probably don't have those wings perfectly lined up and they're not figured out in sort of a really advanced way, but I thought that it was enough for this. So right there you saw me start to flesh out the background really quick and put in a lot of vignetting on his body, really darkening up everything except for his face and sort of pulling the focus to his face. And now I'm putting in the rim light that's coming from the moon. My big focus here was to make sure that I was being really delicate about this rim light and that I was properly representing the shape of his horns and the shape of his hair and make sure that that all just felt really good. I wanted him to be really dimensional because I thought that when I had done the original drawing for this, he just had this really chunky look, and I wanted to make sure that we nailed that on the paint of it. And now we're putting in some of the rim light on that hair down there. So I used the same brush for each section so that it maintains the same look. So I used sable there again for the rim light on that. So now I'm just putting a little bit of extra bounce light from that light coming up from the city. Sort of an orangey, just generic orangey hue. And this is basically it now. This is the end of the piece. So as you can see, there is the finished version. And there's the original that I did 10 years ago, which honestly was even bad for 10 years ago. I don't know why I posted that anywhere. And again, there's the new version of Goliath. So I hope you dug it. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe if you in fact did. And that's it. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.